This program is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure any illness. Please speak with your doctor when starting a new health program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Talk. This is George Batista, your host and wellness advocate. Wellness Talk is the show that goes over the latest in health, healing, nutrition, fitness, and supplements. We take the mystery out of supplements and put a little sanity into health because there's a lot of insanity in health today. Hope you guys are doing great out there. Hope you had a fantastic week. Don't forget to check us out at georgebatista.com or platinumnutritionals.com, whichever you like. Check out all the content and the articles that are on there. And always like, share, and subscribe, whether you're checking us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or MeWe, BitChute, Rumble, or wherever you're listening to this show. All right, and by the way, this month is Heart Healthy Month. February is always Heart Month. Try to make sure we get our hearts in good shape. And I just want to let you guys know that Wellness Resources is having a huge sale off of its cardiovascular health supplements. So it's 25% off of the cardiovascular health supplements, and they have some amazing supplements. I've talked about them before, but you can get 25% off. I'll just name a couple of the really good favorites on Wellness Resources website. You have Cardio Helper. You have Daily Super E, which is a fantastic vitamin E. You have Pantethine, Muscle Mag, which is magnesium. You have Super CoQ10 and just regular CoQ10, Potassium Plus. You've got Fiber Helper, Lipid Helper, and PQQ. And also, if you want just one big package, they also have a cardio supplement package, which has a whole bunch of them all together. I think it's about 6 of the supplements all together. This way you get them all in one shot. So if you definitely looking to keep your heart in great shape, check out all those. Make sure you go down to the description below and just check out Wellness Resources because, again, huge sale for them, 25% off. All right. This week, mitochondria, your battery pack for thyroid, adrenals, and stress tolerance. This is from Wellness Resources' Linda Doberstein. And we're going to be talking about how thyroid, adrenals, and your mitochondria work together to make sure that you have enough energy to kind of run your metabolism and go throughout your day. And this is a great article because it actually kind of puts them all together. And I think this is going to be very beneficial, especially for those of you who have dealt with thyroid issues or maybe have had normal thyroid lab tests but actually don't feel well, or maybe the other way around. Maybe you feel fine, but your lab tests have been off, or you feel sluggish, or whatever the case may be. So I think this article will kind of help you and make some sense out of some of that stuff. Then, from University of Connecticut, a study links higher nutrient intake with lower risk of mortality during a 9.3-year median period. So this was a great study from the National Health and Nutrition Education Survey, and it talks about a huge study of people, about 20,000 men and women who were enrolled in a study, and how there was a huge correlation between them living longer and the amount of nutrition that they actually took into their body. So I think this is going to be very, very helpful for those because it just confirms what we've been saying all the time, right? That the more nutrition you get in your body, the more chance you have of living a healthier life. It's pretty simple if you think about it. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how the CDC finally admitted that natural immunity is superior to vaccines. And this is from Ramon Toomey. So, again, I don't really talk a lot about COVID on this show. I do mention it here and there, but I kind of approach it in a different way because I talk about what we can do to make sure that we are keeping ourselves healthy when it comes to COVID. But because we also talk about immunity on this show, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this because this is something that they have been denying for a long time and finally had to admit. So I think it's very important to talk about. Then, brain power. Study links increased vitamin E levels and physical activity to better academic performance. So this is a good study. This talks about how vitamin E affects not only your brain and your focus, and there was a lot of students in the study, but it also talks about how both vitamin E and actually being athletic and exercising on a regular basis had a real big effect on students and the power, and their ability to focus. So again, great study, mainstream study. So I think this is going to be really good stuff here. So let's get started. First, Wellness Resources, Mitochondria, your battery pack for thyroid, adrenals, and stress tolerance from Linda Doberstein. So, one thing you realize when you're counseling people and you've, have a lot of clients and you've been doing this for many, many years is that thyroid is a big thing. And it's so much more common for people to have thyroid problems. But the thing is that you see all different gray areas and all different variations of it, right? So you see people who have normal thyroid panels, but yet they feel crummy. And they have all the signs of having hypothyroidism, but their thyroid panel is normal. Or you see people whose thyroid is a little out of whack, but they feel fine. And then you see kind of every gray area in between. So with that, this article really sums up a lot of what goes on with mitochondria and metabolism and thyroid and adrenals. So I think this is going to be really, really informative. Now, let's talk a little bit about first thyroid health in general, right? Okay, let's talk about the basics, right? So you have your thyroid hormones, right? You have your T4 and your T3, which are produced and secreted by the thyroid gland, okay? So now T4 is basically tyrosine with 4 molecules of iodine around it. Now, that's secreted by your thyroid gland, okay? And what happens is that T4 is metabolically not active. So it has to be activated. So what happens is one of the molecules of iodine gets stripped off and it turns into T3, which becomes a metabolically active thyroid hormone for it to work properly. Now, there are other minerals that are involved in this whole process. Now, that's not happening properly if you don't have enough selenium, manganese, zinc, and iron, because all of those things are involved in the conversion of T4 into activated T3, which eventually goes throughout the body to start the energy process, right? So now, then you have your adrenals and your adrenal glands. Now, what are your adrenals? Your adrenals are endocrine glands that produce a variety of hormones, including they produce things like adrenaline and steroid hormones, aldosterone, cortisol, all those types of things. And they're found above the kidneys, but each gland has an outer cortex which produces steroid hormones and stuff like that. So now there's a connection between the thyroid and the adrenal gland, okay? Because what happens is you have the command and control center in your brain. You have what's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal thyroid axis, or HPAT. And what that does, it basically makes sure that your thyroid gland and your adrenal glands are talking to each other and make sure that they're working together properly. Okay, so that's got to be in sync, because if that's not synced, then we've already got some problems here, okay? Now, inside the mitochondria, okay, now your mitochondria, by the way, is your cell engines, right? So each cell has like a little cellular engine. And think about if your mitochondria is not working properly, it's like the engine in your car is not working properly, and let's say the engine shut off. You have all the symptoms of being tired, fatigue, and those types of things. So your body, your mitochondria is extremely important, and it makes something called ATP, which is called adenosine triphosphate. That's your fuel, basically. This is what gives you your energy in your body. But now inside each mitochondria are receptor sites for T3 thyroid hormone. Okay, so the amount of T3 received inside a mitochondria sets the metabolic pace for energy production. Because remember, thyroid governs your metabolic energy even when you're at rest. Okay, so in other words, if you get up and you run across the room, that's not thyroid, that's not governed by thyroid, that's adrenaline, right? But if you're sitting there, let's say you're sitting down or you're just doing an everyday activity that doesn't require adrenaline, Okay, that's governed by your thyroid hormone. So now, at the same time, mitochondrial activity also sends signal to the thyroid gland for hormone production, usage, and metabolism. So there's this ongoing loop that's going between the thyroid gland's hormone production, metabolism, mitochondria. So it's kind of this ongoing cycle, and it all has to work in synergy. Now, what can throw this out of whack? So one of the first things that can throw this out of whack is stress, acute stress. Okay, so if you're dealing with a stressful event, or if you're sick or something like that, that can throw this whole thing out of whack, right? So your adrenal hormones, what they typically do is add a burst of energy to your metabolic rate. So this helps you deal with the immediate short-term crisis. Okay, so again, your adrenal hormones kick in if you're dealing with an acute stressful event right there on the spot. It's like a jolt of caffeine if you think about it. But typically what happens is, as your stress calms down and your cortisol levels decline back to normal, then everything kind of goes back to normal, and you get what's called mitochondria autophagy, or repair. So everything kind of goes back to repair. You repair the inflammation, any inflammation that has come up during the stressful time, and everything goes back to normal. But if the stress is ongoing, and this is the key, okay? If the stress is ongoing, the mitochondrial thyroid adrenal balance changes, okay? And this is what you have to think about, okay? This is what can throw things out of whack. So if you have ongoing stress, now who doesn't have stress, right? But we're talking about serious ongoing stress, whether it's stressful jobs, stressful whatever it is, or you're dealing with this a really bad time. What happens with this is this can actually stunt the production of thyroid hormone, which is T4, and actually throw in what's called reverse T3. Okay, so think of reverse T3 as putting on the brakes of your car. So let's say if you're driving and all of a sudden you slam on the brakes and you get a skid, that's kind of what's reverse T3 is. Now, reverse T3 is not as metabolically active as T3, as regular T3 inside your cells. Okay, and there is actual tests that actually can test the amount of reverse T3 that you have, but you don't want a lot of reverse T3, because higher levels of reverse T3 are going to be correlated with a lot of free radicals. The oxidative stress can occur, which can affect your mitochondria, your cells, leads to fatigue, sluggish bowels, increased cholesterol production. All different types of things can happen if you've got a lot of reverse T3. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, when your mitochondria are healthy and in high numbers, for example, like when you're young, your energy levels are usually high and are plentiful, right? So you've got a lot of energy, you're running around, especially when you were younger, 15, 20 years old, whatever, that type of thing. But as you age, your mitochondria does take a hit. So it takes a lot more for you to get that same energy, right? Again, dealing with the stresses through life, but also your, things like sedentary lifestyles, medication, acute stress, infections, all different types of pesticides, herbicides, mold, high sugar, high fat diets, all that can affect mitochondria. And eventually the mitochondria can become injured and eventually make less mitochondria, which again leads to a decline. You're kind of a power drain if you think about it, okay? So now here's the interesting part about this. Again, and this is what I was talking about earlier, those of you who've had thyroid issues or know people who have thyroid issues, you can still have enough thyroid hormone being secreted, okay, to keep your mitochondria, to keep your, in other words, you can have enough thyroid hormone secreted, but still have a power drain. Okay, so for example, this is when you get a lab test and your thyroid levels are normal, but again, you feel crummy, right? You're getting all kinds of symptoms. You have like typical thyroid symptoms or hypothyroid symptoms, for example, like you have chills, you have brain fog, weight gain, constipation, muscle cramps. You're easily winded. You have poor exercise balance, okay, or exercise tolerance. These types of things, okay. So again, this is kind of what is also known as like a subclinical hypothyroidism, even though because on paper it looks fine, but actually you're dealing with the symptoms, okay? And a lot of with thyroid, what I've learned in many, many years is that it's not just about the number. It's also about how you feel. It makes a big difference, okay? And my wife actually deals with this as well, because my wife has dealt with hypothyroidism for over 20 years, okay? And so, this is one of the, and she was one of those people that, yes, she had some weight gain. This was before she was diagnosed, by the way, but she had weight gain, but she didn't have any fatigue. The only thing she had was weight gain, especially around the neck area, and she had no fatigue. She had none of those other symptoms. It was just a weight gain problem. But then when she went to the doctor, they found that her thyroid was sluggish and it wasn't working properly. So again, she was one of those people that was really on the borderline, but it was kind of weird. But anyway, so research shows that as mitochondrial activity declines, there is a progressive failure of your thyroid and its ability to function. And it also opens the door for autoimmune inflammatory reactions in the thyroid. Your goal is to protect your mitochondria and help them recharge. Okay, so that's kind of just an overall general synopsis of the problems there. Now, how can we fix this? How can we fix our mitochondria and then eventually help the whole system? Well, we can do it by mitochondrial biogenesis. And that's basically what you're doing is making new mitochondria. What is one of the ways you can do that? Exercise. High intensity interval training is considered the fastest, most effective method of exercise that promotes the birth of new mitochondria. Okay. Now, there's lots of forms of exercise, right? But it's really those fast, short bursts of exercise that some people call it burst training that really, really is very effective in supporting mitochondrial biogenesis. So that's one way to do it. But remember, if you've never been on an exercise program, this is something you have to start slowly. Now, if you're somebody who's, you regularly exercise and you're in good shape to do that, that's fine. But you also have to take into account how, what your overall status is. So just keep that in mind. Other things that can affect thyroid, how you can help your thyroid, is also nutrients and diet, obviously, right? Because a diet high in sugar and fat impairs mitochondrial biogenesis, induces oxidative stress, and can change the mitochondrial structure. So there's a lot of nutrients that you need to take in to make sure that it's functioning properly. Things like coenzyme Q10, thiamine, vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B3, pretty much all the V vitamins, right? Lipoic acid, carnitine, vitamin C, creatine, and acetylcysteine. These are all things that can help you build the mitochondria as well as the overall exercise program. Now, these cofactors are antioxidants. They help to protect the mitochondria, but they're critically essential for the cellular machinery inside the mitochondria to make ATP. Okay? So, and also, by the way, rest and sleep are vital in this whole thing as well. Okay? So we have a good exercise program, and we have making sure you get the proper nutrients in your system. Okay, Wellness Resources is one of those places that can definitely help you do that. It's got fantastic supplements to help with the nutrition in this part of health. It's got things like Thyroid Helper. It's got curcumin. They've got resveratrol. They've got melatonin. They got PQQ, coenzyme Q10. Fantastic supplements to help you with mitochondrial biogenesis. So again, this is not something that you just can leave alone. This is something that you really can control, or at least have as much control over it as you can on your own if you really get into a good program. So just something to think about. Again, those of you dealing with thyroid issues, make sure that you're looking at those things to boost your overall mitochondrial health, because then it's going to affect everything else, your adrenals, your thyroid, and hopefully get you in the right track. Next, study links higher nutrient intake with lower risk of mortality during 9.3-year median period. And this is out of the University of Connecticut. So This is a study that utilized the data from the National Health and Nutrition Education Survey, and they found an association between having an adequate intake of vitamin E, iron, magnesium, potassium, EPA, DHA, essential amino acids, and fiber, and the lower risk of dying during a median follow-up period of 9.3 years. Now, I'm directly quoting from the study here. The study included 20,000 men and women enrolled in the NHANES. Okay, I guess that's the people who were doing the study. During a median 9.3 year period, 3,539 participants died. The participants who survived were more likely to have reported and higher intake of specific nutrients. Notably, compared to participants whose magnesium intake was among the lowest 1/3, those whose intake was among the top third had 22% lower adjusted risk of dying from any cause, a 35% lower risk of dying from cardiovascular disease, and a 29% lower risk of cancer death during the follow-up. And magnesium wasn't the only nutrient linked to a lower risk, by the way. It was also vitamin E, iron, potassium, fiber. There was a whole bunch of different numbers there, 19%, 15%, 18%. But basically the bottom line is that the more nutrition they had, and these specific nutrients, by the way, which is some of the things that people are really deficient in, I mean, it was a correlation between the longer they lived. And again, this is something that we've talked about on this show, and this is the theme of this show, basically, that the goal is to get the nutrients that you need. And I don't care what diet you use, the vehicle you use doesn't matter to me. The bottom line is to get the proper nutrition. Okay, again, your body runs on vitamins, minerals, amino acids, omega-3 fatty acids. That is what your body needs. And just like the last article, you need all these things to make sure those things are running properly as well, right? So it's that simple. Okay, so if you're not getting the proper nutrients, the magnesiums, the vitamin E's, the fibers, potassiums, irons, all these things, it's just a matter of time before something breaks. So this is a good study. It's a very simple study, but I think you're going to see a lot more studies on this. There have been a lot more studies on this, by the way. So this is nothing really new. This is nothing that we in the holistic arena haven't known. We've known this for a long time, but again, at least there are institutions like this that are doing big studies like this, because that's 20,000 men and women. That's not a small thing, really, if you think about it. So, but it's catching on more and more. So again, get your nutrition. That's the bottom line. Next, brain power. Study links increased vitamin E levels and physical activity to better academic performance. So this is from Natural News, Zoe Sky. So according to a study, adequate levels of vitamin E coupled with regular exercise are also associated with improved cognitive performance in young students. Now, this was a study published in the journal BMC Pediatrics and conducted by researchers at the Department of Rehabilitation Sciences at King Saud University, and this is out of Saudi Arabia. Now, for the study, and I'm going to quote from this article here, the researchers monitored 120 young students actually, 50 girls and 70 boys around 16 years of age, who were enrolled in 6 different senior secondary schools with the same academic curriculum. The researchers found that the students that were classified as moderately or highly active performed better academically compared to the rest of the volunteers. Now, these students were found to have high serum vitamin E levels. Okay. Now, the researchers posited that both vitamin E levels and total antioxidant capacity can be used as indicators for improving exercise function or one's ability to manage thoughts and actions to accomplish certain tasks, physical activity, and the academic performance of students. So this is interesting, okay? Because you have to, understand it. Existing data also shows that vitamin E deficiency in early infancy can increase the risk of conditions like what's called bronchopulmonary dysplasia and delays in development and central nervous system problems in children. So again, this is really, really good because vitamin E is vital. vitamin E is one of those essential nutrients that you need. And vitamin E is also an antioxidant, above 400 units. It is a little bit of a blood thinner, so you have to keep that in mind. But it doesn't matter whether if you're a student or you're not. It is essential for you to have this nutrient. Now you couple that with exercise, because remember, when you exercise, you do create inflammation. Even exercise creates oxidative stress. Now it's good oxidative stress, but it still creates stress. Okay, so I always say you have to make sure that when you exercise, especially if it's really high intensity, after you exercise, you have to make sure you're taking enough of the antioxidants to offset whatever the inflammation that was created by the exercise in the first place. Okay, so I always suggest taking in more nutrients after you're doing a very active exercise session. So, but vitamin E is critical in this process because, again, it works with your brain. It's an antioxidant, and it helps to quench a lot of that oxidation that happens. But the great thing is that it helps with focus. Now, again, DHA, EPA also work in that space. You have other things that work in the brain as well. But this was great news. Now, the researchers advise that students having issues with schoolwork can improve their academic performance and cognitive function by following a healthy diet that includes foods rich in vitamin E. So foods like broccoli, kiwi fruit, mango, tomato, and sunflower seeds. So, obviously not every kid is going to eat all that stuff, but there's some really good stuff in there. But there's a lot of foods that have vitamin E, or again, you can make sure you take a good vitamin E supplement, which is always advised, not only for brain health, but also for heart health. It's one of the best things for heart health as well. So I would throw heart health in there. So not only good academic performance, but also heart health and brain health. I think you get the trifecta in that if you take enough of the vitamin E. So again, good research. This is new information on it, and hopefully more to come. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about what the CDC came out with this past week. Basically, again, this is an article by Raymond Toomey, but you've probably seen it online or whatever, or on the news or whatever. The CDC finally admits that natural immunity is superior to vaccines. And this is one of those things, and again, like I said, I don't really talk a lot about COVID on this podcast, and there's several reasons for that. Number one is because I want to empower people to make sure that they're making good choices so they don't have to succumb to a bad outcome when they're dealing with COVID. But number two, also, people are generally they're done with COVID, really, right? There's a lot of countries are opening up and just dealing with COVID. I've talked about COVID being endemic. I said pretty much everybody's going to be exposed to it at some point. It's going to end up like the flu. Everybody's saying that now. And countries are dealing with it. The United States is one of the countries that is not. And they need to wake up, pretty much. But at least they're acknowledging something here. Because if, and I've talked about this on other shows, but if you do a search prior to the pandemic, and you do a search regarding natural immunity, you will see that the consensus has always been that natural immunity has always been superior to vaccine immunity. This is for years, right? This has been scientists, doctors, virologists, immunologists, they've all said it. Okay, if you get now, obviously the caveat to that is yes, if you can get severely sick if you get whatever the disease is, and you're trying to avoid becoming not only hospitalized or dying from the virus or whatever it is. That's very true. And obviously you may not get that if you get the vaccine. Okay. However, if you get the virus, whatever it is, COVID or whatever the virus is, the natural immunity has always been shown to be better. Especially, again, if you look prior to COVID, it has always been shown to be much better. And part of the reason for that is because a lot of people check for antibodies, right? Which is fine, but antibodies do wane over time. So it's not just about antibodies, because you can check 6 months or a year later after somebody's had a specific virus or disease, and their antibodies may be low. But you do have something called T cell activation, right? T cells and B cells, they have memory, right? B cells create antibodies, but T cells help them out in this process. But T cell activation is basically how your memory works for your immune system. So even though you have low antibodies at that point, if you encounter the virus again, your T cell activation will go up, meaning that your immune system will recognize the virus and spring into action. And this could be a way that you may be asymptomatic, or you may have very little symptoms. Okay, and this is what's gone on ever since vaccines have been introduced, right? Think about it. You get, as kids, we've got MMR vaccines, we've got, you've got polio vaccines, you've got all these vaccines. How many of those MMR vaccines and stuff did you have to get boosters for, right? Think about it. How many of those vaccines did you have to get boosters every year for? You don't, right? You get them once as a kid and you're done. So, and now you could say, yes, well, those diseases are few and far between now, measles and stuff like that. But there's still people getting measles out there. But yeah, it's a very low segment of the population. But the point is that your immune system takes care of these things. Okay, that's your immune system has been around since we have walked on this planet. It was designed that way, and it has learned through the thousands of years of plagues and viruses and bacteria and funguses that it has encountered through the process of evolution. It has learned to deal with these things when they come. Okay, so the fact that natural immunity wasn't recognized was a terrible thing, number one. And they tried to explain it as saying that one of the reasons why they didn't want to recognize it in the beginning was because they didn't want people to just run out and get COVID and then they're done, right? They have natural immunity, they're done, and ignore vaccines. I could understand that, but at the end of the day, especially with this latest variant, everybody's getting it. It doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not. So everybody at some point is going to have natural immunity. It's just going to be a fact, right? You're going to be exposed to it. You're going to get natural immunity at some point. So this is what you have an immune system for. Your body, and keep in mind that your body your body knows how to heal itself. Again, it has been healing itself for thousands of years. It grew itself all by itself. So why wouldn't it be able to deal with a virus, even if the virus was man-made? So it's just something to think about, again, when we talk about critical thinking and what needs to, the public health response and what needs to change out there, because you have to do what you need to do to boost your immune system, which is, again, something that I've been singing on this show since I've started on this show. One thing that the pandemic has brought out is the fact that how unhealthy our society is, if you think about it, right? Because I think, this is just my opinion, but I think that if more people would have been at a better weight, if more people would have had vitamin D, if more people would have had the proper nutrients that they needed, ate healthy, smoked less, exercised more, all right? If a good segment of the population would have been doing that, I can pretty much extrapolate from that you would have had a lot less disease, or at least a lot less hospitalizations, and maybe even a lot less deaths. All right. I don't think I'm going out on a limb to say that, right? But of course, that's not promoted. So I'm going to promote it on this show. So anyway, it's good that the CDC is finally acknowledging this, but just something to think about. Again, obviously you don't want to run out and get COVID if you don't have to get it, but be prepared just in case it does come. The more prepared you are, the better the outcome will be. Okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, so that's it for this week. Hope you guys have a great week. Make sure you stay healthy, take care of yourself and each other, and as always, take control of your health.